The most common types of maladaptive daydreams, Part 1. According to Harvard Medical School, maladaptive daydreaming occurs when a person engages in prolonged bouts of daydreaming, often hours at a time, to cope with a problem. The daydreaming is maladaptive because it causes significant distress and impairment. The daydreams are often vivid and complex plots that elicit a great deal of emotion. A person becomes so consumed by their daydream they may fail to complete work and other daily tasks, or start to withdraw from friends and family. Maladaptive daydreaming affects roughly 2.5% of the global population, and the symptoms include the following: intense and extremely vivid daydreams, complex and elaborate daydreams, often with many people involved, daydreams accompanied by repetitive movements such as pacing, prolonged daydreams that may last hours at a time, a feeling of disconnect or dissociation from people and reality during the episode. The likely cause of maladaptive daydreaming is that it is a coping mechanism to deal with pre-existing neurodivergence or mental illness. Maladaptive daydreaming is not a mental illness in itself. Statistics cited from Harvard Medical School showcase that nearly 80% of participants with maladaptive daydreaming also had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, followed closely by anxiety disorders, 71.8%, depression, 56.4%, and obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, at 53.9%. So what are the most common daydreaming archetypes, and what unmet emotional need could they be fulfilling? Psychiatrist Carl Jung once argued that the unconscious mind does not translate itself to us literally, but rather through symbolism. This theory provides a compelling framework that I have utilized to examine maladaptive daydreams. Our fantasies may be demonstrating to us, in a symbolic form, what we are missing in our external world. The daydreams I will be exploring are the following: romance and fame. And in the next episode, I will explore the suffering fantasy and the revenge fantasy. Welcome to episode 3 of Thoughts and Flowers. The romance fantasy. Finding a perfect partner or soulmate, falling in love, and being seen and appreciated by this figure. The object of desire could be represented by a fictional character, celebrity, or an idealized version of a person you know in real life. At first, you may believe this fantasy is purely about romance and a genuine desire for romantic reciprocation. And in certain cases, it is. But this daydream can also identify a deeper pathological need to be understood. If you divorce your daydream from the symbolic romantic elements and ask yourself, what feeling does this daydream provide me with? You can identify the need beneath the fantasy. The fantasy can be representative of a desire to be chosen, accepted for your authentic self, and to be provided with a sense of security that you may not experience in reality. The most emotionally intense and fulfilling parts of a romance fantasy may not be the lustful or intimate elements, but rather the elements in which you are listened to, defended, noticed, and ultimately seen and appreciated for your most earnest self. This daydreaming is intoxicating psychologically because a romantic relationship can symbolize the height of psychological security. Your brain creates a character who gives you unconditional acceptance because that's the emotional experience it's trying to generate. The romance fantasy is simply a vessel utilized in order to meet a desire for acceptance and security. So why do relationships provide us with such great emotional security? A growing body of research suggests that humans regulate emotions not solely alone, but also through close social relationships, a process known as co-regulation. Coan's social baseline theory. James Coan theorized and proposed the social baseline theory in 2015. It argues that the human brain evolved assuming that other people would be available to share emotional issues such as stress and threats to safety. The theory suggests that supportive relationships reduce the amount of mental and psychological effort we need to deal with these challenges, allowing us to upload elements of these issues onto another trusted person. A quote from the theory is that social relationships are the baseline for human psychological functioning. This does not imply we cannot regulate ourselves sufficiently, but that a healthy, attached connection can enable our brains to work more efficiently when stress is shared with trusted others. Furthermore, another study conducted by James Coan and others suggests that hand-holding quite literally changes the brain. Participants in this trial anticipated receiving mild electric shocks whilst undergoing brain scans. Participants completed these scans alone, holding a stranger's hand, holding their spouse's hand, and the results were astounding. Holding a spouse's hand significantly reduced activation in the brain's fear and threat anticipation regions. Furthermore, the happier the marriage was, the greater the calming effect became. Hand-holding is not merely a source of comfort. It also shows that the brain perceives the world as less threatening when a trusted attachment figure is present. Attachment changes the brain. Supportive relationships lower baseline cortisol, increase oxytocin, often nicknamed the bonding hormone, and foster a stable psychological baseline. So if you dream of a relationship, this could suggest you currently struggle to regulate and provide yourself with the necessary emotional security, attempting to fulfill this lack through fantasy. Fame fantasies. Fame fantasies are often symbolic. You may earnestly believe that you desire a large following, widespread recognition, notoriety, and influence. But if you analyze these dreams and their symbolism, they can point to another psychological desire. If your dreams involve the following: interviews, acceptance speeches, being discovered for a talent, those who have belittled you regretting their actions, masses appreciating your work, this indicates your dreams represent a desire for recognition. The underlying desire is for a sense of significance and acknowledgement you may not be afforded in reality. Many of the approximately 207 million people suffering from maladaptive daydreaming likely do not desire to be famous. Rather, they are seeking the approval and acknowledgement that they matter and are worthy of appreciation. On the surface, I want to be famous appears to be a shallow fantasy, yet observing testimonies on r/maladaptive daydreaming and mentalhealthforum.net, the fantasies are often incredibly personal. The daydreams often involve the following: running into a bully or cruel old friend, an ex who regrets leaving you, an undermining teacher who discovers your success, or a parent becoming proud of you. The common thread in these fantasies is that recognition is not just from strangers, which is what fame typically entails, but rather recognition and acceptance from those you know or have known personally. A fame fantasy provides you with the agency to reconstruct a social hierarchy that once made you feel inferior. If you have been made to feel that you are unimportant or undervalued, a fame fantasy can help heal this emotional wound. A fame fantasy can provide you with imaginary evidence that you are a valuable person. And this is because fame is indisputable proof that you hold some type of value. For example, if a singular person compliments you, it may feel gratifying, but this compliment could easily be dismissed as the other person being polite or courteous. Yet if you receive compliments and recognition from an audience of millions, that recognition becomes impossible to undermine. It is proof you hold some sense of value. Psychologically, fame provides objective validation. Fame also removes the deep-seated psychological fear of being overlooked. Humans fear being rendered insignificant, not in the great cosmic sense, but rather in the interpersonal sense. If you wonder, will these people remember me? Do I matter to anyone? Who would notice if I disappeared? Fame fantasies could provide us with a comforting answer. Millions of empathetic witnesses who notice and care. Whether or not the person consciously wants millions of followers, this fantasy is often proof that the dreamer desires personal recognition. Furthermore, these fantasies aren't often about being admired for the sake of it. They are about being admired for a specific quality, a film, a song, an invention, a speech, etc., providing proof that the unique interiors of your psyche are worthy of recognition. In conclusion, when exploring one's own fantasies, it is easy to be occupied by the narrative, but if you question, what emotion does this fantasy provide me with, as opposed to, why do I daydream of fame or romance, you can come closer to substituting this fantasy with a healthier external alternative. Healing maladaptive daydreaming isn't necessarily about fighting your desires or feeling shame surrounding them, but rather understanding them and what they can symbolize. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned for the next part where I will dissect suffering and revenge fantasies.